I didn't realize I was paying for my brother's life until my parents raised my rent. On paper, it looked reasonable. I rented the upstairs apartment in the duplex they owned. The price had always been slightly below market value, something my parents mentioned often enough that I felt obligated to be grateful. Whenever relatives complimented me for getting such a good deal, I nodded. What I didn't mention was that I fixed leaking faucets, shoveled snow, painted walls between tenants, and rarely asked them for anything. The arrangement worked because I believed we were helping each other. Then, one Sunday afternoon, my father handed me a typed letter across the kitchen table. The rent would increase by $400 beginning the following month. No discussion, just a date and a number. I looked at him, expecting an explanation. The expenses have gone up, he said. My mother added, you'll still be paying less than anyone else. I could afford it, barely. But something about the conversation felt rehearsed. 2 weeks later, my aunt accidentally answered the question nobody else had. She assumed I already knew. Your brother finally found another apartment? What do you mean? She looked uncomfortable. I thought your parents told you. She hesitated before continuing. They're helping him with rent again. They said increasing yours would balance things out. She immediately regretted saying it. I didn't. For the first time, the numbers made sense. My brother was 30 years old. He had left 3 jobs in 2 years because each one wasn't the right fit. Whenever money ran short, my parents rescued him. Whenever they needed more money, they looked at me. It wasn't really about rent. It was about predictability. They knew he would ask. They knew I wouldn't. That evening, I opened my laptop not to argue, to search. I spent the next month visiting apartments after work. I compared neighborhoods, commute times, utility costs, and lease terms. I signed a lease across town. It wasn't glamorous. The kitchen was smaller, the building was older, but every dollar I paid there belonged to the life I was building instead of the problems I hadn't created. I didn't announce my decision. I packed a little every evening. Books first, then winter clothes, then dishes. By moving quietly, I discovered something interesting. Nobody noticed. My parents visited twice during those weeks. Neither realized half the shelves were already empty. On the last Saturday, a few friends helped load the remaining furniture. By sunset, the apartment was clean. I left the keys on the counter with a short note thanking my parents for renting to me over the years. Nothing else. 3 days later, my phone exploded with missed calls. Then came the messages. Why didn't you tell us? This puts us in a difficult position. We weren't prepared. That last sentence stayed with me. Neither had I. I hadn't been prepared when my rent became my brother's allowance. I called my father that evening. He sounded more worried than angry. You should have talked to us. I tried when you handed me the letter. We thought you'd understand. I do understand. He was silent. I understand better than you think. A week later, my mother asked if we could meet. We sat in a quiet cafe near her office. She looked tired. She explained that after I'd moved out, they discovered they couldn't immediately rent the apartment again. Their insurance required several repairs before another tenant could move in, and the city inspection uncovered electrical work that had to be updated first. The apartment would sit empty for months. Mortgage payments continued, repair bills arrived, the extra income they expected had disappeared. None of it sounded satisfying. Just sad. Finally, she said, we never meant to push you away. I stirred my coffee before answering. You didn't push me away in one decision. She looked at me without speaking. It happened every time solving his problems became my responsibility. She started to object, then stopped, maybe because she couldn't honestly say it wasn't true. A few days later, my brother called. For the first time in years, he laughed awkwardly. So, everybody's acting like this is some huge family crisis. It isn't. No, it's just the first time I stopped fixing it. He didn't know what to say after that. Neither did I. Months passed. I settled into my new apartment. It wasn't perfect. The neighbors were noisy. The laundry room was always busy. The elevator broke more often than it should. But every month when I paid rent, I felt something unexpected, relief. Not because it was cheaper. It wasn't. Because it was honest. Eventually, my parents rented their apartment again after completing the repairs. Life became quieter. Family dinners happened occasionally. The old habits still surfaced. My brother still expected help. My parents still worried about him first. Some patterns survive because everyone involved understands their role. Mine simply changed. One evening, my mother asked whether I ever regretted leaving. I thought about the question longer than she expected. I miss believing we were treating each other fairly. She lowered her eyes. I don't miss living like we weren't. That was the closest either of us came to an apology. It wasn't complete, it wasn't dramatic, but it was real. And for the first time in my adult life, my address and my future belonged only to me.